This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is probably powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, desperately seeking an Xbox, new games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store. And remember that current students, faculty, parents, and active military can save up to 10% on almost everything. To browse the products and to learn about the discounts, go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, we talked about Insteon, a company that has been in the connected home game for a very long time. I've got some products out in mission control right now from a programming session that we did years ago. A couple weeks ago, they, boom, vanished with no trace, no mention. The service status page said everything was fine, but devices stopped working, in particular the cloud-based devices, smart features, things like that, just all of a sudden stopped working. About a day later, the company finally admitted that, yes, they had run out of money and decided to shut down without letting anybody know, which is a really, really crappy thing to do, especially for a service that your home depends on. So they said that they had hoped to find a buyer. They had been working with a buyer that fell apart at the last minute, which is why they ended up closing without telling anybody. Not a good excuse, but it is what it is. Then this week, something interesting happened. The devices started working again. Again, with no communication from the company. Just all of a sudden, hub features, those cloud features, schedules, all of those things started working again. People didn't receive any emails or anything. Their devices just started working. The app started working again. And when people tried to get information, once again, they didn't hear anything. But this time, it's for a good reason. Here's what happened. A small group of dedicated Insteon users bought the company. They went and bought the company. They received it in phases. Essentially, as the company was able to release bits to them, they did. And the first thing that they asked for was access to the servers. They wanted to get the actual system back up and running before they got access to the email system, the customer database, any of that stuff. The first thing they asked for was the servers because they wanted customers' devices to be back up and running as soon as possible. And then they got access to the customer list and the email server, which is when they then sent out an email and published a blog post. They received control over the domain last. So they put up a blog post from the new CEO of the company, Ken Fairbanks, who was, I believe, an engineer for the company from like 2007 to 2011-ish. In the blog post, he said, small group of dedicated users. We've bought the company. We waited to let everybody know because we didn't have access to things. So as of right now, we have no further information than that, which in and of itself is a little concerning because Insteon shut down because they've ran out of money. So, is this new group going to face the same trouble? Mayhaps. It depends on whether it was incompetence or greed or laziness that drove the previous owners into trouble, or if it was simply that this particular business is unsustainable. I suppose we'll find out pretty soon. If they were that close to having the lights turned off, the new owners will find out soon if it was a bad investment. But I can't imagine that it was, or they wouldn't have done it, right?
I don't know about that.
That's true.
We, not to change the subject too much, but a certain world's wealthiest man wanted to buy a certain social media network, not because it would make good business sense.
True.
And just because he wanted it, for whatever reasons, that he wanted to be able to say things on it or get his friends or people that he agreed with to say things on it. And now, the same world's wealthiest man seems to want to get out of that deal because it's turning out to be worse and worse business every day.
Yeah.
So, so I don't think we should assume that people always buy companies for rational.
Fair enough.
For rational reasons. They're not, business people are not Vulcans. They don't always make logical decisions. They make emotional decisions. We also see this happen in the stock market every day when things go up and down for, emotional reasons. So,
true.
That's I don't know if this is a business that can be sustained at all. It could just be that people really like the business. Well, true. Good for them. I mean, the reality is,
under the owners before the group that just had it, under the original owners, they sustained for a very long time. And then it seemed like it was almost like a hostile takeover that this group took over and then ran it into the ground. So it's possible that the business is viable and that the last people were just in it for a different reason. That they weren't in it because they wanted to be in it. They were in it because they saw something else in it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's always possible. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So people don't see the potential in a business. But usually when it's been run into the ground, it's hard to dig it out. So, I mean, I guess the question is, are they hopefully going to make it so that you don't need any of their servers?
Right? Is it possible that they bought the assets so that they could get the software to open source it and then move on? Or there's all kinds of possibilities as to why they purchased the company.
That's a lot of money to pay to keep your smart home working. I mean, you could just buy a different smart home equipment rather than buying the company.
True. We don't know how much they purchased it for. In fairness, I didn't.
Whatever it is, it's more money. Whatever it is, I promise you, it's more money than going to Best Buy and buying a few smart home things. Okay?
Yeah, and in fairness, they could just get a bunch of the Energizer Connect stuff, which is unbelievably inexpensive and made by a company that is trustworthy. So
right. There's a lot of opportunities. So, I mean, good for them, I guess. Even better for people who didn't have to invest money in the company and now get their product to work.
Right. Yeah, it's my guess is, as I said, the new CEO, Ken Fairbanks, is a former engineer for the company. I suspect that the rest of them probably are as well. Potentially people who left during a previously turbulent time in the company, who are coming back in the hopes of bringing it back to its heyday. I haven't heard other names, but I do suspect. My suspicion is that there's a bunch of former engineers and then some sort of a financial backer. If I had to take a guess, that's my suspicion on what it is. And people from the 2007 to 2011, like Fairbanks, from that era, I met a lot of them. I may have met this one, because they used to travel around doing like programming stuff. They came to Microsoft meetups to show us how to program against these devices. So they were really active in the community. And I think that's when they worked. And then when they stopped being really active in the community, I think is when they started to have trouble. So maybe we'll see a resurgence here. Either way, it is definitely an interesting follow-up to a very strange story. We've talked many times about the dangers, whether it be in gadgets, gaming, obviously internet, probably even in media. Oh, yeah, we've talked about this across all four of our primary topic categories on the show, the dangers of entirely cloud-based services. Because when EA decides to kill Playfish, or Insteon vanishes overnight, or what was the streaming service that vanished and took its media with it? Anyway, doesn't matter what the service is. If it just disappears, it just disappears. Oh, there's podcasting hosts do it all the time. There's a good example for media.
Right.
They disappear, and your stuff goes with it. So it's definitely something to consider. You know, if you've got a hub that's not internet dependent, that everything runs locally. We've had a couple of them on the show during CES over the years. You know, that's certainly a safer way. It tends to be a more expensive way to go, but it does prevent these kinds of problems, which is nice. Although the convenience of being able to use your smartphone from anywhere. There's ups and downs, but there's all kinds of features that don't have to be cloud-based. The scheduling and stuff didn't have to be cloud-based on this. You have a hub. It could have been local.
Yeah, I'm particularly, as you get in the topic, I'm particularly irritated by the fact that, and I'm pretty sure that this is all cloud-based, but I can't 100% prove it, that my router here requires a smartphone app to configure the router. You cannot configure the router from the, you have to use the smartphone app. You have to create an account with the company that owns it. So I think if that company went out of business, I think the router might stop working, or I would at the very least lose my ability to make changes to the settings on the router.
Could be. I feel that way. So we've got two separate networks in here for two different internet service providers that come into the production computer, and they both came with different hardware from the ISPs, and both of them seem to require that. I think the one that's in mission control I can get around. I think there's also I think I can access the internal web server, but I don't think the one that's in here is that way.
Yeah. So the offending router I have here is an Aris Surfboard Max, but my mother, a few months ago set up for her the Google Mesh network, and it was the same thing. You had to have an app.
Yep. So.
And don't think just because it's Google that it will never go away, because Google probably will be around, but their support for older hardware may not be. Yeah. So
will this division stay around because we didn't suspect that Google Plus was going away, right? There's all kinds of things that Google's like, nah, we're done playing around with this. Goodbye.
Yeah. And look at all the e-waste that creates, right? Because, I mean, it's a waste of your money.
Yeah.
But it's also going to end up in a landfill somewhere, because, some of these things that, your smart home stuff, why would you need to upgrade it that often? If it's controlling the light, it's probably okay.
Yep.
You probably don't need to get a new one.
If it's a door or window break sensor, it's honest to God, it's a magnet and a piece of metal. That is the extent of the difficulty of those things. They almost never have to be replaced. The wireless ones, maybe the Wi-Fi chip goes bad eventually, but in general, those things will last forever. So yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
if you want to avoid, if you're an Insteon user and you want to avoid going back to relying on their service, we do have some links to some of the open source platforms that are also able to control your hub, so that you don't have to go back to the Insteon service. In the case of the routers, they're usually firmware, but that's not an everybody type thing, just like this isn't an everybody type thing. So it doesn't solve everybody's problem, but it is good to know that those things do exist. And of course, if you have additional questions, you can always reach out on these topics. We love to help. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.